Look at modern history, and it's easy to see why so many people are deeply skeptical of religion. Too often, it looks like a calculated tool designed by kings and clerics to demand blind obedience and control the masses. But if you read the Qur'an, you'll find something entirely unexpected. It completely agrees with that exact critique. Throughout its text, the Qur'an explicitly warns against letting human authorities hoard religious power to build their own wealth or cement their supremacy. To understand how it does this, we have to look at an Arabic word found everywhere in the text: deen. In the Qur'an, deen describes a comprehensive system of life, or law, a foundational framework governing every social and legal interaction. By anchoring this entire system to a law alone, the text challenges any ruler or scholar who tries to claim ownership of it. This creates a framework designed to dismantle human monopolies and return ultimate authority to the Creator. Historically, the first way this system gets hijacked is through politics, when state power mutates into unquestionable law. This diagram outlines what the Qur'an calls Deen al-Muluk, the system of the king. Here, human rulers override any external or divine moral compass, creating a closed loop where the state dictates its own supreme laws directly to the masses. The text uses Pharaoh as the ultimate historical example of this fusion. He claimed both political and religious supremacy, demanding total submission to his state as if he were a god himself. When any political structure demands absolute obedience above divine guidance, it functions as a false religion, regardless of the titles its leaders hold. But power structures aren't always political. The second major hijack happens from within, driven by religious gatekeepers and unquestioned traditions. Look closely at this new structure. We call this clerical control. Here, human opinions and scholarly monopolies position themselves as a bottleneck, intercepting and overriding actual divine revelation before it reaches the public. Chapter 9, verse 31 of the Qur'an issues a severe warning about this exact bottleneck. It criticizes communities for taking their scholars and monks as lords besides God, by giving them blind, unquestioning obedience. The text is relentless in calling out the symptoms of this clerical takeover: leaders selling faith for a price, enforcing fear-based control, and populations mindlessly repeating ancestral traditions without ever thinking for themselves. When human interpretation blocks out the source material, individuals are stripped of their intellectual responsibility. Religion stops being an active pursuit of truth and decays into a cult of personality. The Qur'an firmly rejects both of these human-controlled systems, offering a very different model for society in their place. This matrix maps out the three authority structures we've covered. The third column represents Dinul Law, Allah's system. Its central defining principle is that ultimate judgment and supreme authority belong to none except the Creator. Under this framework, there are no gatekeepers. The individual is required to submit directly to God's revelation, entirely bypassing the human bottlenecks that define the first two columns. Without an elite class thinking on their behalf, the burden shifts directly to the individual. They are commanded to pursue knowledge, reflect deeply, act with sincerity, and uphold justice. The result is a system of life that is heavily anti-authoritarian when it comes to human power structures. But if we remove these gatekeepers and establish a direct connection to God, does that mean society devolves into anarchy? Are we supposed to reject all governments and all teachers? Not at all. The Qur'an insists on an organized society, specifically built on a concept called shura, or mutual consultation. The system requires structure. It just places very strict boundaries on the roles humans are allowed to play within it. In this model, religious scholars still exist, but their job is simply to educate and explain the text based on evidence. They have no right to dictate absolute law or demand blind loyalty. And the exact same goes for rulers. Their function is to administer justice, not to act as supreme lords. A human leader is merely a servant of the divine system, never the source of it. By isolating these different models of authority, we can see how the Qur'an consistently moves power away from human centers and anchors it strictly within the revelation. This is why the text issues such a clear command in chapter 7, verse 3. Follow strictly what has been revealed, and reject human protectors who falsely claim supreme authority over your life. When human beings build systems centered around themselves, history shows it inevitably leads to sectarian arrogance and mass exploitation. A revelation-centered system cuts the root of that exploitation. According to the text, faith is not about mindless subservience to people in robes or crowns. It is a profound, educated accountability held directly with the Creator. When you remove the kings, the clerics, and the systems of control, you realize that submitting exclusively to God's law isn't a restriction. It is the ultimate